Hi, I'm Jim Ward of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 12 in our History Bites series. Today we will discuss the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks on our country and how courageous Americans rose to the occasion under horrific circumstances. Not since December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor had America experienced an attack from a foreign enemy on its own soil. September 11th, 2001 started out as a normal day. It was a beautiful, clear, almost fall day. People were getting ready for the start of another workday or heading to school like normal. Many were heading to meetings at the World Trade Center or the Pentagon. Others were boarding planes to travel for leisure or business internationally and right here in the United States. On 9/11, 19 terrorists associated with the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes and carried out suicide attacks. Everything changed when American Airlines Flight 11, loaded with 20,000 gallons of jet fuel, carrying 81 passengers, was hijacked and flown intentionally into Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the second tower of the World Trade Center. The collisions caused a massive explosion that showered burning debris over surrounding buildings and onto the streets below. It immediately became clear that America was under attack. At 9:37 a.m., a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, crashed into the Pentagon, killing 125. A fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after its passengers rushed the cockpit. It is said that the terrorists' intended target was the White House or the Capitol building. President George W. Bush, nearly 8 months into his first term, was visiting Emma E. Booker Elementary School in Sarasota, Florida, as Congress was coming back to Washington. He was in a classroom reading with second graders and listening as the children recited the story back to him. Chief of Staff Andy Card approached the president and whispered into his ear, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." After being informed of the attacks, President George W. Bush and members of his staff traveled throughout the day in search of secure locations, landing at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and later landing at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. Eventually, President Bush would return to Washington, D.C. that evening, landing at Andrews Air Force Base and taking a helicopter to the White House. As soon as the planes hit and disaster was imminent, New York's emergency personnel put themselves in harm's way to save lives. Police and firefighters bravely entered the burning buildings. Others served by planning rescue operations and keeping order amid the chaos. On 9/11, 343 firefighters and 60 police officers of the NYPD and Port Authority made the ultimate sacrifice. There were many heroic acts performed by emergency personnel that day. There's the story of Stairwell B in Tower 1. Josephine Harris's rescue by New York City firefighters was among the most enduring and heroic to emanate from the horror of September 11, 2001. Ladder 6 arrived at the Trade Center and firefighters ran into the lobby of One World Trade Center minutes before a plane hit the South Tower. They entered Stairwell B and began climbing, each man carrying 100 pounds of gear. At one point, they reversed course and headed down. At the 14th or 15th floor, they encountered Harris. She had been walking down from the 73rd floor but was exhausted. The firefighters could not leave her and decided to assist her down to safety. Around the 4th floor, she collapsed and insisted the firefighters leave her. At that point, while Harris and the firefighters paused, it happened. The tower collapsed above and beneath them. The section in the stairwell where Harris stopped and refused to go any further, the small pocket of Stairwell B, between the 2nd and 4th floors of the building, was the only area spared in the collapse. If they had been moving any faster or slower, they most certainly would have been crushed by the debris. The group was eventually rescued, and both Harris and the firefighters thanked each other for their life-saving actions. The Ladder 6 crew had a jacket made for Harris that read, "Our Guardian Angel." Battalion Chief Oreo Palmer of the FDNY led his team up to the crash zone on the 78th floor of the South Tower to rescue workers trapped inside, one of the first few first responders to reach that point. Palmer and another firefighter continued to fight the blaze. According to the 9/11 Commission report, Palmer and his team freed a group of civilians who were trapped in an elevator 1 minute before the tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m. Outside the North Tower, Chief of Department Peter Ganchi coordinated evacuation efforts. Ganchi instructed then-Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, Fire Commissioner Thomas von Ensign, and others to clear the area because he believed the North Tower would fall. Ganchi himself did not evacuate the area, saying, "I'm not leaving my men," and remained at that location with Deputy Commissioner William Feehan. Both Ganchi and Feehan were killed when the second tower collapsed. After hearing about the attacks, NYPD veteran Ramon Suarez took a taxi to the World Trade Center. He raced inside to help people escape. Officer Suarez was last seen re-entering the North Tower after he and another officer rescued a woman who couldn't walk. He was killed when the North Tower collapsed. Their stories are just a glimpse into the heroic acts that took place on September 11th. Ordinary civilians also showed tremendous leadership and courage in the face of terror. American Airlines Flight 11 was the first plane to be hijacked on the morning of September 11, 2001. After terrorists seized control at around 8:15 a.m., flight attendants Betty Young and Madeline Amy Sweeney managed to contact the airline. Ong described their situation, including the terrorists' use of a mace-like gas, and Sweeney relayed where the hijackers had been sitting. The two helped authorities understand the kind of threat the country was facing, and the information they shared would prove useful in identifying the hijackers. The flight attendants stayed on their calls until nearly the moment their plane was deliberately flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. Meanwhile, a 4th California-bound plane, United Flight 93, was hijacked about 40 minutes after leaving Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey. Because the plane had been delayed in taking off, passengers on board learned of events in New York and Washington via cell phone and air phone calls to the ground. Knowing that the aircraft was not returning to an airport as the hijackers claimed, a group of passengers and flight attendants planned an insurrection. One of the passengers, Thomas Burnett Jr., told his wife over the phone that, "I know we're all going to die. There's 3 of us who are going to do something about it. I love you, honey." Another passenger, Todd Beamer, was on the phone with GTE telephone switchboard operator Lisa Jefferson as she stayed on the line with Beamer, listening as he talked about his family, his fears, and his faith, and she prayed the Lord's Prayer and the 23rd Psalm with him. The last thing Jefferson heard Todd Beamer say was, "Are you guys ready? Let's roll." Sandy Bradshaw, a flight attendant, called her husband and explained that she had slipped into a galley and was filling pitchers with boiling water. Her last words to him were, "Everyone's running to first class. I've got to go. Bye." She and other passengers rushed the terrorists, possibly getting into the cockpit, forcing the terrorists to crash the plane in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It is said that these brave Americans prevented that plane from attacking the White House or the Capitol building. Their actions are considered the first victory in the War on Terror. Stanley Praimnath was on the 81st floor of the South Tower when a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, struck at 9:03 a.m. Praimnath's location was close enough to the strike point that he could see the plane approaching. Though he miraculously survived, the resulting damage and destruction left him with no discernible way out. Fortunately, Brian Clark, who also worked in the tower, responded to Praimnath's cries for help. With Clark's encouragement, Praimnath managed to jump past debris blocking his way. The 2 men proceeded to descend from the destroyed upper floors and made it out of the tower. Clark felt Praimnath had helped him survive as well. The group he'd been with when he went to Praimnath's aid had climbed higher to await help, a decision with fatal consequences as the South Tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m. Following the attacks, exiting the World Trade Center's towers via elevator wasn't an option. Those evacuating upper floors had to descend in sweltering stairwells that were often filled with smoke. The route was difficult enough for the able-bodied. For wheelchair users, it was impossible. When Michael Benfante encouraged wheelchair user Tina Hansen on the 68th floor of the North Tower, he and co-worker John Cerquera carried her in a lightweight emergency chair down multiple flights and through treacherous conditions. Fortunately, all three safely got out of the building. The Pentagon was the third target of the morning, with American Airlines Flight 77 hitting the building at 9:37 a.m. Thanks to the efforts of survivors and first responders who bravely entered the fiery crash site, many of the injured made it outside the building. There, a triage area had been set up by Patricia Horoho, an Army nurse who was then a lieutenant colonel. Though Horoho had nothing more than a first aid kit to work with at first, her knowledge and experience in burn care and trauma management helped her oversee the provision of medical treatment. She's credited with caring for 75 people that day, though she noted it was an integrated effort by so many people. Wells Crowther, a 24-year-old trader, returned to the upper floors of the South Tower to shepherd others to safety. When hijacked Flight 175 hit the World Trade Center's South Tower, people on the 78th floor sky lobby huddled together, frightened and confused. There was no escape as far as they could tell. Then a man with a red bandana covering his nose and mouth suddenly appeared from the wreckage and smoke. He spoke in a calm voice and guided them to a stairway, leading them to safety. The man in the red bandana made 3 trips to the sky lobby, saving as many people as he could until the burning building collapsed. He's definitely my guardian angel. No ifs, ands, or buts, because without him, we would be sitting there waiting until the building came down, said survivor Ling Young. Crowther's body was later recovered alongside firefighters in a stairwell heading back up the tower with the Jaws of Life rescue tool. Brittany was 2 years old at the time of the attacks. She and Denise Corliss, her owner and handler, worked at Ground Zero for 10 days as their mission went from rescue to recovery. Brittany remained the only living 9/11 search and rescue dog until June 6, 2016, when she was laid to rest just shy of 17 years old. As Brittany entered the animal hospital in Cypress, Texas, firefighters and search and rescue workers from the fire department lined the sidewalk and saluted. She was carried out later, her body draped in an American flag. Later in the evening of September 11th, President George W. Bush addressed the American people and reassured a stunned nation.
A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
3 days later, President Bush visited Ground Zero, as it had come to be called, in the days after the Twin Towers fell. Standing on a fire truck with firefighter Bob Beckwith, Bush thanked the rescue personnel for their dedication and hard work and reassured the nation that America would respond.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Among the men and women killed on September 11th were many first responders who were at the World Trade Center to assist those trapped and injured by the attacks. The deaths include 23 New York City police officers, 37 Port Authority officers, and 343 members of the New York City Fire Department. Those who lost their lives in the line of duty were heroes, yet the first responders who continued to show up and work in the days after the attacks demonstrated their own heroism. After losing colleagues, friends, and family members, firefighters, police officers, and others reported for duty at Ground Zero. There they endured grueling shifts and dangerous conditions as they looked for survivors and searched for remains for months to come. September 11, 2001 was a tragic day for America, but it brought out the best of its citizens, from the rescue workers trying to save victims to ordinary citizens fighting back against evil on Flight 93. After 9/11, our country was united, and a wave of patriotism swept the nation. Many would courageously enlist in the military to defend our nation. It took a little over a decade, but a new building was constructed and originally was known as the Freedom Tower. Today, it is One World Trade Center. A memorial on each of the footprints was created, as well as a museum that honors the lives of those lost on 9/11. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. Let us today, on this 19th anniversary of September 11th, remember the men and women who perished in the attacks, the brave emergency personnel workers who fought to save lives, and the members of our military who have served since September 11th, 2001. Thank you.